let's get started. So, intelligence versus emotional intelligence. Okay, what's the difference between the two? This is the very, very wordy difference between the two. I simplify it for you in a couple of slides because for those of you on the call that know me, I like it straightforward, I like it simple. I don't know what that says about me, but that's the way. And I think sometimes things can get overcomplicated, but nevertheless, I thought I would give you this. This is the definition, the official definition of between the two. So emotional quotient, or quotient, should I say, EQ, or emotional intelligence is the ability to identify, assess, and control the emotions of oneself and others. So just pause there for a moment, okay? The ability to identify, assess, and control the emotions of oneself and others. I have a little argument with part of that sentence. Control is the issue that I've got here. We are ultimately in control of our emotions because, as most of you know, it's our thinking that drives our chemical release. So the thinking, electrochemical, thinking, feeling, I've got that model just to flick up and remind you of it in a little while. So we can control our emotions to a certain degree. There are inbuilt emotions, fight or flight, pain response, things like that you could argue. Are they controllable? To a certain degree, yes. You can have people lying on a bed of nails, walking through fire, and they kind of suppress the pain that's there. For most people, no, because we don't train our brains to do that. So a bit of an issue with the word control, and especially a bit of an issue with the word control of other people's emotions. I don't believe that you can control other people's emotions, but you can be aware of them, and this is what the emotional intelligence is for me, being aware of those emotions and being able to aid and influence them. That's the bigger reason for me for learning emotional intelligence. I'm not sure control's the right word, but nevertheless, there you go. An intelligence quotient, so that's IQ, is a score derived from one of several standardized tests designed to assess intelligence. Exams, Mensa, all that type of stuff. So one is quite academic intelligence, and the other one is about emotion. Okay, so sometimes if you Google this, you'll see on the internet it'll say head and heart, for argument's sake. A little bit fluffy for me, that, to be honest, but it will say head and heart. Head being IQ, heart being EQ, or EIQ, as sometimes as it's known. So that's the definition. Basically, I've broke this down and made it a little bit simpler when we get to it in a moment. But let's just break down IQ and EQ before I give you my simpler version of it. So, IQ represents abilities such as visual processing, knowledge of the world, fluid reasoning, working memory, short-term, long-term. Okay, so that's all kind of logical kind of stuff in there, and quantitative reasoning. So that's what your IQ is, okay? That's what your intelligence is. And then we've got the EQ. And you'll see there, identifying emotions. So again, first one at the top of the list there is about emotional responses. Evaluating how other people feel. Again, if you've got high levels of emotional intelligence, then you'll generally be quite empathetic. Don't get empathy mixed up with sympathy. They're two very, very different things. But you can understand other people's points of view, you can see things from different angles, and so on and so on and so on. Controlling one's own emotions. Again, can you completely control your emotions? Well, if your thinking generates your chemical release, then the argument... Oh, somebody's not on mute. Whoever's not on mute, could you just mute yourself for me, guys? It's somebody that's on the phone. I can't mute you. If you could mute me, you mute yourself, that'd be great. Okay. So, controlling one's emotions, thinking, emotions, electrochemical. Can you control them? Yes, but it takes a little bit of time. It takes triggers, it takes self-talk and everything else. that we've discussed in previous sessions, but there are some responses, fight and flight, that you might perceive uncontrollable. They are controllable. I mean, to the point where, somebody once said to me, well, you can't teach yourself not to breathe, for argument's sake. And my response to that was, well, the world champion freediver can hold his breath for over 11 minutes. So, to a certain degree, yes, she can. Most people on this call might not be alive after 3 or 4 minutes of holding their breath, but if you've trained yourself to do it, and you've trained your brain not to go into fight or flight, especially when you're 100 foot down underwater, to be able to breathe, there is a certain level that we are able to control things, but day to day, if you don't work on them, then those emotions might overwhelm us, and we may feel out of control of them at that point. Perception of how others feel, as I've said, understand how others are feeling, intuition, like that. Using emotions to facilitate social communication. So that's picking up on how the other person is thinking and feeling when you're able to talk to them and help them in any way. And then relating to others. Sorry guys, somebody's still not on mute. Whoever's on the phone, ending in 31, the phone number is, can you mute yourself please, if at all possible? I can't mute you from this end. Okay, I just don't want it interfering with the rest of the people on here. Okay, great. Right, emotional intelligence then. There's my definition of it. A little bit more straightforward, a little more to the point. The understanding of how you're thinking affects your behaviour, and of course within that you've got your emotions, and we've got that scale that we go through, haven't we? Everything from thinking, beliefs, attitude, emotions, behaviour. Okay, at the top there, yeah? So the understanding of how your thinking affects your behaviour, and how other people's thinking affects their behaviour. And for me, emotions are sandwiched between thinking and behaviour. They're in that middle bit, aren't they? And just to remind you of that, there's the tear cycle that I always relate to, okay? So our thinking generates our emotions, our chemical release. Our emotions generate our actions generate our results that we get. What we want to do is give people helpful thinking, not hindering thinking, helpful thinking that will generate positive chemical release into the system, that will give you the energy and motivation to do whatever it is you want, to take the action, and that will get you your results. So we know that this works, and thinking comes out in results, in other words, behaviour. Emotions are sandwiched in between that little path that we've got there, okay? So, emotional intelligence is about understanding your emotions and people, okay? And those emojis just represent different emotions that we have going on. And if we can understand how our emotions affect us and how other people's emotions affect us, we can be more emotionally intelligent when it comes to dealing with people. Maybe sometime in your career you've said something and it's not meant a lot to you, but somebody's taken that and gone away and got really upset about it, and we didn't really click. Why have you got upset about it? Oh no, why? I didn't want you to get upset. And that may be showing a lack of emotional intelligence, and that's not a bad thing. Look, I've done it before. As we grow up, as in our leadership and within industry, we learn more about people. As we go through school, we learn more about ourselves and more about people. And sometimes we can't always see what's right in front of us. You will find high green profiles. And for I have got the profiles up here, but I'm not spending a long time on it because we've done it over and over and over again on different sessions. But high kind of green profiles, it might be up next, I'll get it up there. You will find have quite a lot of empathy. high greens. So you will often find that their emotional intelligence, they go out of their way to learn about other people and how it feels. Of course, that depends on the interplay with the other 4 vectors that are going on. So me being a high red vector, and I mean this in no mean way to any high reds on the call today, but high reds tend to go ahead and not always consider other people's feelings and emotions. Depends on the level of green that you've got with the red, of course, but because a high red is very direct to the point, straightforward, get on with it, task orientated, quite logical thinking, they have to sometimes just remember to angrily bring that red down, bring that green up a little bit with that, okay? So, we all have our own filing cabinet. So let's just talk about this for a moment, because the filing cabinet, or hard drive if you're younger than me, whatever you want to call this, is the little thing that's in your head that records everything, okay? It records everything. In fact, everything that you ever do through your perception is recorded, okay? So if you think of your mind for a moment, what we've got here, if this circle represents your conscious mind, okay, that's your filter, okay? Your filter is your conscious mind, and in your conscious mind you can filter in 7 to 9 things at once, and we've talked about this before. 7 average for a male, 9 average for a female. Apologies gents, but that's just the way it is. On average, the male brain can focus on 7 things at once. The female brain on average can focus on 9, okay? On average every 7 seconds that is happening as well, okay? All of that stuff is bombarding your brain, and your conscious mind filters in what it wants. Okay, and that filters in if you've got 20 things trying to go in, like at the moment you will have me, you will have your screen, you'll also have the lighting in the room, the temperature, all that type of stuff that you weren't focused on before, but you are now because we just talked about it. All of this is bombarding your brain, and it's trying to get into your filing cabinet. Your brain won't let it all in to your filing cabinet, otherwise you go a bit doolally because you couldn't cope with all the input. So what it lets through is it lets through, on average, 7 to 9 things, okay? Your conscious mind, it's your filter. That's what it is. So if you weren't a minute ago thinking about having a cup of coffee, you might be now, because we're talking about having a cup of coffee. And somebody mentioned my Starbucks cup earlier. Maybe that meant, oh, do you know what? I need a cup of coffee. I haven't had one this morning, or whatever it may be. So focus can change very quickly. From that filtered information, you have your subconscious mind. And in your subconscious mind, you have, excuse my drawing, your filing cabinet that goes in there, right? Or hard drive if you're young, it doesn't really matter. Hard drive, filing cabinet, in my head it's a filing cabinet. And everything that goes into your filing cabinet has come through your filter, which means it's your perception. So everything that you've ever perceived through every single sense that you've got, hear, feel, smell, see, taste, whatever the sense is. Oh, I think we've got a question. I had to leave, I have no sound, sorry. Oh, I don't know why you've got no sound. Solid state, Mick's put solid state drive now, SSD. Yeah, do you know what, you're probably right. So whether it's a hard drive, or it's a filing cabinet, or it's an SSD drive, thank you Mick, for making me feel a little bit older, then everything you've ever perceived through every single sense is in your filing cabinet. Now just take a moment to think about that, because the theory states that you record everything from just before you're born. It's just our recall of it that is the problem. Because once it goes into your filing cabinet, somehow you've got to get it back out when you want it. And we can't recall all of the stuff that goes in. Aaron's put, can it be a USB drive? Centrica don't allow them. Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of companies that don't allow USB drives. I think sometimes mine's a USB drive, Aaron. So, whatever you get recorded going in, potentially you can recall. However, if we don't tell ourselves we can recall it, we can't recall it. So, for instance, if you're one of those people that says, I'm terrible with names, I can never remember names, I'm rubbish at remembering names, the instruction that goes into your head at that point is I'm rubbish with names. So if you try to recall the names that you want, you won't be able to, because that instruction's overriding your filing cabinet. Okay? But the theory states everything. This is what hypnosis is based on. Hypnosis is based on turning off this filter here and getting straight into your filing cabinet and taking a file out or putting a file in, depending on why you're being hypnotized. Okay? So this is really important when it comes to emotional intelligence, because everything that you've recorded goes in, but we have to be better at recalling it when we want to get it back out, if that makes sense. However, and here's the most important thing when it comes to emotional intelligence, our filing cabinet is different to other people's filing cabinets. So our filing cabinet is our perception of the world, and other people's filing cabinets is their perception of the world, which is why we don't always see the same thing. You can be looking at the same thing. You can have maybe a chair in the room. Oops, gone too fast. Maybe a chair in the room, and somebody will sit on it and tell you that it's comfortable, and somebody else will sit on it and tell you that it isn't comfortable. The fact is, it's the same chair, but we have a different perception of the world based on how we've perceived things in the past and filed all those files into our filing cabinet. This is why understanding other people is quite difficult. I mean, the standing joke for trainers with emotional intelligence is it's a wonder anybody gets on with anybody, because our filing cabinets are so different to other people's filing cabinets. Maybe you've had a time in your life or at work where you've seen somebody do something and you've gone, well, what have you done that for? Why would you even approach it that way? Yeah? And to you, it's absolutely crazy why somebody's done something else. But to them, that's the way they would approach it. And so we don't see eye to eye with each other. And this is what hinders emotional intelligence. So trying to understand how people file those files, which is these meta programs, and what files they're running, or meta programs is the actual term in NLP. If we can understand people better and understand these meta programs, we can help understand what's in their filing cabinet, and then we're best able to understand them as a person. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to agree. It doesn't mean for a moment you're going to agree with somebody else's files. But at least if there's an understanding of them, then we have a better understanding of each other, which basically means also you can influence people in a better way. Now, influence is quite an important thing in life if you want to be successful in anything. Whether that's in business, whether that's in sport, whether that's in hobbies, whether that's in being a parent, it doesn't really matter. But in order to be successful, you can't really do it on your own. Success, in fact, there's not a lot on this planet that you can do on your own, in all honesty. And I know some of you will be racking your brains now going, well, there's some things maybe I do on my own. Well, if you go to the toilet in your house, somebody's probably made that toilet and plumbed it in. So in other words, you needed to involve somebody else. Unless you go to the toilet in the woods. Fine, I get it. You did it on your own, right? But most things these days, we need other people's input for it. And being successful is a major part of that. And in order to be successful, you need people's help to help you be successful. And in order to do that, you need to influence them, and you need people to want to help you. And if people understand your files, and you understand other people's files, they are more likely to help you. Or you can influence them. And just bear in mind there's a big difference between influence and manipulation. Okay, the main difference between the two is the intent, why you're doing it. Okay, the tools are very similar between influence and manipulation, but the main difference is intent. So if you are doing it for the right reason, you know, I want to be a successful business owner and employer and things like that, and you need people to help you. So if you can grow your emotional intelligence and understand how your files work and how other people's files work, then it gives you something to be able to influence people with in the right way, of course, with the right intent, and you can become more successful quicker, or you can help other people become more successful and happier and everything else that people want in life. Okay, so just bear in mind, other people have completely different files in their filing cabinets. Okay, so can emotional intelligence be taught? The big answer to that is yes, it can absolutely be taught. The problem is, we don't teach it at school. We are getting better at it. And my eldest daughter in her last year of school did something called citizenship classes, where they started to go into psychology of the brain and how you talk to yourself and stuff like that. And but we don't teach it from an early age. We don't teach it to children and so on and so on. What we tend to teach are IQ things rather than EQ things at school. But the great news is yes, you can grow your emotional intelligence level. In fact, there was a study done by a body called Very Well Mind. That's what the body is, and they actually did this with children, and they tested it, and 50% of children that were enrolled onto SEL lessons, which is social and emotional learning. Okay, so learning about themselves, learning about other people, learning about social environments, communication and everything else. 50% of those children 50% of the children, 40% of them had improved grades. Okay, so their IQ increased along with the EIQ. Okay, there was lower suspension rates in the school, there was increased attendance in the school, and there was reduced disciplinaries in the school. And that's because people learn about themselves and how their behaviour impacts other people. Because we don't always realise that, do we? Sometimes we go through our day, we do our thing, especially, again, pardon the pun, if you're a high red, sometimes you go at 1,000,000 miles an hour and you don't always see what else is around you as well. So all of this stuff, I mean, that's a test of children. You know, as adults, we have more awareness than children, hopefully, not everybody, to be fair. But the fact is, you can grow your emotional intelligence. That's the key. And if you do that, you're likely to understand people better, understand yourself better, be more empathetic, more people will help you, and you'll be able to influence. It's about, you've got to show the right behaviours in order to get the right behaviours of other people. So just bear that in mind, because that was part of the survey that was done with children, teaching children. That was part of it, that the teachers showed those behaviours. Exactly the same in business. If you're a leader, you have to show those behaviours. If you are not a leader, you still have to show those behaviours. For instance, delivery, care, agility, all your values that you've got in there. If those are the company values, we have to show those behaviours. Yeah, you might be thinking, well, how do you show care? Well, quite easily. You just make sure you do the right thing with people. You treat people in the right way. You treat people with respect. You don't lose your temper. All that type, whether it's internal or external, doesn't really matter. So realistically, I know you've probably got your five or six values that you could tell me what they are, but actually what sits under those values? What are the behaviours? And again, vitally important with emotional intelligence, because if you want to influence other people, and you're not showing those behaviours, then you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle to influence them, unless you use authority, and that doesn't really work short term, and it's long term, and it certainly doesn't motivate people at the same time. So they modelled positive behaviours. They encouraged people to think about their feelings and other people's feelings. Now, that's not very British, is it? You know, I've said this a number of times. You know, keep calm and carry on. We don't often talk about feelings. There's two main reasons we don't talk about feelings. The first one is we're scared of whatever the answer's going to be. You know, if somebody goes, you know, tell me how you're feeling, what's going on, and all of a sudden they do, we don't really know how to deal with that sometimes. But also, we're British as well, so we don't really talk about them. It's part of the culture. It is getting a bit better. But remember, there are chemicals in your system over 300 times more powerful than morphine. Those chemicals are emotions. It is important that we talk about feelings, and people know how you want them to feel. And when they're not feeling great, that they can share that, and you can help them change those emotions. It all adds up to increasing emotional intelligence. That's what it all. If we stay away from feelings, then our EQ stays low. By talking about them, understanding them, we have to increase them. And it is self-education. That's one of the top tips I'm going to give you today. What is it that you can do weekly that will increase your emotional intelligence level? We'll talk about that a little bit later. Loads of stuff you can do, okay? Showing more empathy. Making a conscious effort to try and be more understanding and see other people's points of view. That also increases your emotional intelligence. On the occasion that I've done that, and I've sat back and understood somebody else's point of view fully before making a decision or jumping in, actually it served me quite well. I've been able to make a more informed choice, and it's educated me at the same time. Okay? Now don't get me wrong. Look, there's times in business where you want to be empathetic, and there's times that you don't. You know, if the fire alarm's going off, don't ask somebody how they're feeling about, you know, the fire alarm going off. Tell them to get out the building. Okay? So you've got to use this in the right way. Yeah? If it's business or health and safety critical, if it's critical, then people need to follow logical instructions, don't they? After the fact, you might need to help them with the shock and everything else, and that's where the empathy would come in. But a lot of the times, things aren't business critical, and we can be a little bit more empathetic, understand people's feelings a little bit more, understand our own feelings. You know, if you're feeling a bit annoyed at the moment, you know, when you've had one of those days where you go, do you know what, I've just been ratty all day today. Instead of just leaving it there, I've been ratty all day, follow it on with, I've been ratty all day. What caused that? What was it that was causing that? Try and do a bit of root cause analysis and find out what was generating that emotion, so you're able to then deal with it or change it in the future if you choose to. Okay? And it is a choice, this, guys. I'm not throwing all this at you today going, you've got to do this, you should do this. It's all a choice, guys. I'm not in control of your feelings, which was the point that I made at the beginning of today's session, excuse me. However, in a business sense, I think we all have a certain responsibility to understand other people's points of view as and when we can, to make sure that we can all work together collectively to get the team and the company output on the back of it, okay? Those traits there that the teacher did, they're also great leadership traits, as we've said, okay? Good, let's move on. So, some of you might remember this model. Some of you have seen me do it as a tree. I sometimes do it as an iceberg as well to change it up a little bit. I'm not going to spend a long time on it because I want to get to those meta programs, and I have done this before in another session, but it's very important that we put this back up because this will link that thinking, the IQ, to the EIQ, and comes out in your behaviour. So, we'll work it backwards. Top of the iceberg, behaviour. The reason it's at the top of the iceberg is because that's the water level. That's the only thing you see of other people. You don't see their feelings, albeit if you're emotionally intelligent, you can have intuition into their feelings. When it comes to behaviour, we have peak performance and we have worst performance. So two sides to the model. What is it that gives us our behaviour? It's our emotions. That's where your EQ comes in, at that level, okay? Your emotions generate your behaviour. They give you the chemical release, the energy to make you feel good, bad, different, empowered, enthusiastic, motivated or not, sleepy, tired, and everything else that's going on, okay? Emotions, you can have great ones or you can have lousy ones. When you feel great, you're likely to get peak performance. When you feel lousy, you're likely to get worse performance. So what is it that generates our emotions? Our attitude. You can pretend, this line is the pretend line, for those that remember. You can feel lousy and pretend to be at your best. People can see through that sometimes. When you don't feel good but you're trying to be at your best, it'll also make you really tired and really emotional. as well, because it's hard work when you're pretending to do something and then you're trying to be, you're doing something and trying to do it at your best, but you're not really in it. It's very, very tiring with that. Our attitude generates our emotions. Oh, my voice went all squeaky then, didn't it? Positive attitude makes us feel great, and we get peak performance. Negative attitude makes us feel lousy, and we get worse type performance. What is it that gives us our attitude? Our beliefs. Our beliefs. If we have inspiring ones, we have a great attitude, and so on. If we have self-limiting beliefs, and I'll be talking about a little bit of that later at 11:30 when we do the imposter syndrome at 11:30. Self-limiting beliefs give us a negative attitude, make us feel lousy, get worse type behaviour. What is it that gives us our beliefs? And bearing in mind, to a neurologist, a belief is just a pathway in the brain. A pathway that you've gone over and over and over and over and over again. For those people that have seen me do dendrite work before, you would have remembered the pathways that we talked about. Our input or thinking drives our beliefs. So that's the IQ. Okay? This is where your intelligence is. All the stuff that you input, and it generates your level of filing cabinet. Okay? Your filing cabinet is then built with beliefs, attitude, and feelings. And then it comes out in your behaviour. So all of that stuff is filed. So it's not just a memory filed. Well, it is a memory filed, but if you think of a memory, a really vivid one, it won't just be the picture that you can remember. It'll be the feeling. It'll be maybe what you said. It'll be emotive, because all of that is what's in your filing cabinet or your hard drive or MIC, your SSD drive or USB, whatever you've got in your head. Yeah, it's all filed in there. But it comes through that input, which is your perception, if you remember here. Your perception, 7 things at once on average every 7 seconds. Okay? So, we know how that works. It's the input that goes in first, comes out in your behaviour. This is why, if you look at somebody else's behaviour and they've done something you don't understand, all you're doing, excuse me, is perceiving their behaviour. You can't see the rest of this. Just like an iceberg, the rest of this is under the water. You can't see it. You might have some intuition in their feelings if your emotional intelligence is high, but you can't see their attitude, you can't see their beliefs. And you certainly can't see their thinking that's going on. So you only see behaviour, which is why sometimes we see somebody, we make a quick judgment, and then we don't get on with them, or we can't influence them, and our EQ stays quite low. So knowing this type of stuff, this is a cognitive behavioural model, by the way, guys. So again, when it comes to self-education, if you want to Google cognitive behavioural models or look on TED Talks or something like that, you can learn all about this stuff, and it helps with the emotional intelligence piece. Okay? No problem, Sandra. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, so you've got 2 choices with this. You can have bad input or good input, and you can choose how it comes out in your behaviour. That comes all the way back to self-talk, and last week we did a whole hour on self-talk. That will also be, that session, the power of self-talk, is actually on the YouTube channel that's going to be going out to you as well. So you've got all of that information if you want to go and check that out. Especially the short little videos. I think you might be interested in them. 2 or 3 minutes long. So nothing major you've got to sit down and kind of go through. Okay? So we're going to be building this library for you as we go. Okay? Okay, you've all seen this before. I mentioned it earlier. If you're new to the session, this is 4 quadrants of people. High red, reds and blues are logical, greens and yellows are more emotional. So it makes sense perfectly straight away that if you are a green or a yellow, you tend to have certain levels of emotional intelligence. If you're red and blue, you're a very logical thinker. It doesn't mean that you can't have high levels of emotional intelligence, but it means that you probably work on it. If that makes sense, it means that your first instinct will be to go logical rather than emotional, whereas yellows and greens will go emotional before logical. Okay? However, it doesn't mean you can't adapt it, and it doesn't mean that you can't learn the emotional intelligence piece. Okay? In order to influence other people, and I have used this triangle before when we talked about customers. We did a session on great customer service, or customer service excellence, I think it was called. I'm now going to just show you this from an individual point of view. in order to influence somebody, we have to first understand and accept who they are. So this little relationship scale here is acknowledge, understand, accept, respect, trust and bond. Okay? It works in a customer setting or a sales setting, also works in a building relationships setting with each other. Before you can influence somebody, and we all need people that are going to help us become successful, remember, first we need to acknowledge the people around us, okay? Then we need to seek to understand them. And when I say understand, everything that we've done so far today. So understand people's behaviour, understand the way people do things, understand maybe their profile, understand maybe they're different to you and they've got a different filing cabinet that you've got. Once you've done a load of understanding, you might get to the point of acceptance. Now at that point, they will help you, you will help them, okay? And then over time, you might build respect between the two of you, and then you might build trust, and if you build trust, that leads to what we call a bond level relationship. That is somebody that you trust implicitly, like the back of your hand, you know them that well, and you're going to be friends with them for the next 20 years, and so on and so on and so on, okay? So, we can very quickly use this relationship scale. So, if you're trying to build your emotional intelligence by doing this, by moving people through this scale, you get to know people better, and that will also aid in your emotional intelligence growth as well, okay? So, I promised you some meta programs earlier on. So meta programs are a term from neuro-linguistic programming, NLP for short, okay? And they're programs that run in people's heads, okay? And there are opposite programs to the programs that other people have, and this is why there is a disconnect between different types of people. So understanding these meta programs and knowing that other people might be running opposite programs to you in their head, like I say, it doesn't mean that you always agree with that, but it will give you an understanding of why people do different things, and again, increase your emotional intelligence, which is what today is all about, okay? So let's get stuck into the first meta program. So the first meta program is about towards and away from. Now sometimes I use this term about motivation, and you obviously this links very, very well towards motivation. But if you have a toward motivated meta program, then you are driven by targets and benefits, okay? So you are aiming for something in the future. That's what a towards meta program is when it comes to towards and away from, okay? I tend to do this quite a lot. So, for instance, let's use revising for an exam as an example, okay? You've got the exam, you set out your stall, you know when you're going to revise what, and it's all done in a nice methodical way up to so you're prepared for the exam. That's what a towards meta program is, okay? Then you've got the opposite, which is an away from meta program, which is instead of moving towards a target, we actually move away from pain, right? So, if you've got an exam, you might be the type of person that leaves it until you're majorly under pressure for time to then revise and get it all in so you can then do the exam, okay? Now, when I go through these meta programs, there is no right and wrong. Okay, so don't be thinking, well, you should be doing that. There's only different. There's no right or wrong, because people, you know, I was one of those people that like to set out and towards motivated, if you like, set out the revision and get it for the exam. But sometimes I do flip into I'll leave it until I need to do it, which is the moving away from pain. So we can flip between these, but you will have one driving factor. Okay, you will have one driving factor. So for instance, when I started to run, to exercise, I wanted to run because I wanted to lose some weight and get healthier, but in order, I needed a target to aim for, so I booked a race, and then I knew that I had that race then, and I could back engineer the run, and so on and so on and so on. But sometimes, getting up in the morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, I had to get up because there was a target, I was sponsored, so I moved away from the pain. So you can flip between these, but generally you'll probably find you have a dominant meta program when it comes to it. So what is your meta program? Rhetorical question. Is your meta program a towards target and benefit program, or is it move away from the pain? That's what gets me motivated, because that's what gets people motivated sometimes. I'll leave it until the deadline's getting close, and then I'll get the energy to go and do something about it, okay? But you could probably see already, if you have one of each person in a room, they would just argue, because they have a completely different approach. And this is why people don't always see eye to eye, because we've got these different meta programs running. So, meta program number 1, towards and away from. Next meta program, internal and external. Okay? This meta program is if you have an internal program running, then you set standards for yourself, and your self-approval is all you need. Okay, so that's what we call an internal meta program. So you set your own targets in your head, and you only need your self-approval. You don't need anybody to tell you that you're doing a good job and well done and all that. Your self-approval is enough. That's what an internal meta program is. An external meta program is that you look to others to set standards and you want some outside approval. Okay? So, I think I, again, flip sometimes between both of these programs. I think I've had to move towards the external one, since obviously working for myself, setting targets, but then I'm quite happy if a client says, can I have this by this date? And then they get it. What I do know of my own program is I do like the outside approval. So I definitely have some external meta program running in my profile. People going, well done, great job, all that type of stuff. That increases my self-belief much more than, John, you did a good job there, which is the self-approval. So again, if you've got these two types of people in a room about, you know, for instance, if you're internal, if somebody says well done to you, you might get a bit embarrassed, or you might not like it. Whereas if you're external, you know, stand on a table, shout it from the rooftops. It doesn't really matter. But that's the internal, external meta program. So again, you can see different people, different programs running, which is why we don't always see eye to eye. Next meta program, sameness and difference. Okay? If you have a sameness meta program, you are motivated by similar things. Okay? So, people within sameness meta program would have really struggled when COVID-19 hit. Okay, so people that like sameness is they like the parameters they work in, they don't like anything to change very much, they're very effective in that little arena that they're in, and so on and so on and so on. Okay, so everything is pretty much the same. I know what I like, and I know the way I like it to be. Okay, if you have a different meta program running, you need different things and new opportunities to keep you interested. Okay, so if you're the type of person that if you look back over your career, you have done different jobs every couple of years, for argument's sake. You don't need to, I don't mean change company, I mean just do different things within there, or you take different projects on at different times, then that might be an example of your different meta program running, where if somebody is in a job for 20 years doing the same thing, you would argue they are a sameness meta program running. They have a sameness meta program running. And again, there's no right and wrong with this. There's just different for different people. Okay? So again, you can just see now how different people are and why we have different programs running. However, if you can ascertain what those programs are from other people, it will grow your emotional intelligence. And to be honest, just by learning these meta programs, it will grow your emotional intelligence. And I'll make sure that we've got little clips of this when your YouTube channel goes out, so you can go back to it. Okay? Okay, proactive and reactive is the next meta program that we talk about. If you have a proactive meta program, you are an initiator. Somebody that takes action very quickly, there's no delay, get on with it, okay? Action orientated, jump in where angels fear to tread, and off you go, okay? If you have a reactive meta program, you are the type of person that will reflect and make sure that all the planning phase is done properly. So you could probably on this one start to cross-reference the colour profiles at this point. So if you are a high red, you're probably going to be proactive, as in get something done, no delay, let's get on with it. If you are a high green blue, then you're going to be planning and analysing before you take any action. So you can start to cross-reference this one now with your personality profiles that are going on there, okay? So again, this is why people don't see eye to eye. You've got a proactive meta program running and somebody's that wants to get on with it and get the job done, and you've got reactive meta programs making sure we need to make it planned right, we need to make sure that we're going to do the right thing before we do the right thing. And this is why sometimes there's a disconnect. However, in a team, you would want both of these things. In fact, in a team, you would want all meta programs. This is why team dynamics is sometimes difficult and challenging, because we don't always see eye to eye with the people in the team. But without having all of those meta programs running in a team, we don't necessarily cover all the bases. Because if you had a team full of proactive meta programs, there'd be loads of things that would get done, but maybe not necessarily the right things. Likewise, if you had a load of people that were reactive meta programs, you'd get the plans would be brilliant, but the action might be slow to take. So this is why we need all of these programs in a team or a business, but it doesn't mean we're always going to get on, which is why I spend so much of my life doing team dynamics work with people and helping people understand who they are and what they do and all that type of stuff. Okay? Okay. Last one. I think it's the last meta program. And then I've got 3 top tips for you before we finish. Alright guys? So, options and procedures. If you have a options meta program running, then you only need an overview of things in life. Okay? That's what your options is. So, if you are a procedural meta program person, you need guidelines and details. Okay? So I'll give you this little example. Remember, there's no right and wrong when it comes to this. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, this example. But my girlfriend, she has a procedure a meta program running. I generally have an options program meta running. So she'll tell me something that's gone on in her day, and she will start at the beginning, give me every single little bit of detail, and then give me the actual point about 20 minutes later. Okay? And I say it tongue-in-cheek because my options meta program that is running is going, I just need the point. Give me the point. Okay? And I'm sure some guys on this call today are smiling right now because you might have opposite meta programs to your loved ones as well. There is no right or wrong, remember. There is just different. Okay? And sometimes we have to do this. Sometimes I need to get into the detail. I have to flip my meta program. But overwhelmingly for me, my meta program is options, which means I want the points, give them to me, give me the overview, let's crack on, rather than give me the detail. But sometimes we have to read the detail, don't we? Sometimes we need that. Oh, hiya Pete, I didn't see you come onto the call this morning, well done. Simply being able to understand that we are all different and others are programmed differently is the key to being aware before getting frustrated. That, to be fair, Pete, you've just described emotional intelligence. Okay? In my words, understanding how your thinking affects your emotions and behaviour, and understanding how other people's thinking and emotions affects their behaviour. And exactly as Pete's just said, understanding that people are programmed in a different way doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means they're different. Okay? And you're different to them as well. So you might be getting frustrated with somebody, they're probably getting frustrated with you as well, because their meta programs are different meta programs, and remember, we've all got different filing cabinets based on our meta programs that we've got running. So just spending that little bit of time, like Pete said, getting to know people, understanding them, get to a level of acceptance on that relationship scale, it goes a long way. It goes a very, very long way in order to increase emotional intelligence. And by the way, when that happens, not only does the emotional intelligence get better, but the tasky stuff gets better as well, the logical stuff. So when you've got great relationships with people, things get done quicker, faster, easier, slicker, without any problem. Because everybody understands, and there is something called positive intent. And I don't think that we do enough of this sometimes in business. Positive intent is assuming people are doing things for the right reason. People are too quick to assume people have done something for an ulterior motive. And I think having positive intent goes a long way. Don't get me wrong, sometimes somebody will be doing something because they're a pain in the backside and they've done it out of spite. I'll give you that. But if we do have positive intent, then it helps things go quicker, and you normally find the best in people. Okay? So, I've got 60 seconds left. 3 top tips. Dead simple ones that you can take away and start doing something with. Okay? So, the first one. Self-education. PDP. Excuse me. Personal development plan. Put some time in your diary. Once a week. 5-10 minutes. Go onto Google. Go onto YouTube, go onto TED Talks and find something about emotional intelligence, how people work, and educate yourself. The more you educate yourself, the better you're going to be at it. It's as simple as that, okay? The more you learn, the more you're going to be at it, okay? We don't teach it at school, and we don't teach it generally in business, apart from today, of course, and the sessions that I run with you. So go and learn for it. That's top tip number 1, dead easy. Top tip number 2, make an effort to understand. People have different filing cabinets, as Pete's just said, we've covered it off. People have different views of the world. There's no right and wrong, there's just different, okay? Your filing cabinet is different to my filing cabinet. Just understand other people and have positive intent. And finally, number 3, role model positive behaviour. If you want positive behaviour of somebody else, it starts with you. You've got to do it first, okay? You will find what you are. Simple as that. Whatever you look for in life, you will find it back. So if you're modelling that positive behaviour, yeah, choose what you put into other people's filing cabinets. I'll finish on the quote I use a lot. Gandhi says, "I do not let other people walk through my mind with their dirty feet." In other words, just be careful of what other people put in your filing cabinet, but more to the point when it comes to EQ, what are you putting in other people's filing cabinets? Just be aware of that, because they'll see your behaviour and then they'll file it forever. Okay? It goes in there forever. So just be careful of how you're walking through other people's minds. Okay? I hope you've enjoyed the session for today. I'm 1 minute over. We've got quite a lot of feedback requests for this one, so do me a favour, guys. As always, in the chat box, leave your feedback in there before you leave. Thank you for all coming in today. I'm doing the next session in 29 minutes, and that is on the imposter syndrome. That should be a really interesting session as well. So I'll either see you at 11:30, otherwise I'll see you next week. Have a good one. Bye for now.